The metallic corridors of the Galactic Defense Academy hummed with nervous energy as species from across the known galaxy gathered for the most dangerous training program in existence. Cadet Maya Chen stood barely 5 feet tall among towering Krillian warriors and crystalline Vexari intellects, her simple human uniform looking almost primitive next to the advanced environmental suits and biomodifications of her peers. The orientation hall stretched before them like a cathedral of steel and starlight, its transparent dome revealing the swirling nebula that housed the academy. Commander Thicksall, a 6-armed Zenthari with scales that shifted color with emotion, addressed the assembled cadets with the gravity of someone who had seen too many promising young warriors reduced to stellar dust. "Welcome to the Omega Protocol Training Program." Commander Thicksall's voice resonated through the universal translators embedded in each cadet's collar. "You represent the finest candidates from your respective worlds, selected for your potential to defend this galaxy against the Void Hunters." Maya felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon her as whispers rippled through the crowd. She was the only human in a class of 300, and her presence had been the subject of heated debate among the Galactic Council for months. Humans were still considered a primitive species, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere 50 years ago. Most civilizations had been exploring the stars for millennia. The commander's scales shifted to a deep purple as he continued. "The statistics are not encouraging. Historical data shows that only 12% of cadets survive the full training protocol. For new species," his multifaceted eyes fixed on Maya, "the survival rate drops to 2%. A Krillian cadet standing nearly 8 feet tall with natural armor plating that gleamed under the artificial lights let out what could only be described as a snort of derision. 2%? His voice boomed through his helmet speakers. "Why waste resources on dead weight?" Maya turned to face the towering warrior, her brown eyes sparkling with something that made several nearby cadets take an unconscious step backward. Instead of the fear or indignation they expected, she smiled. It was the kind of smile that had unnerved bullies throughout her childhood on Earth, the kind that suggested she knew something they didn't. 2%, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. "That's more than enough." The Krillian's helmet displays flickered as he processed this response. Around them, other cadets exchanged glances that needed no translation. Either this human was completely insane, or she possessed a level of confidence that bordered on the supernatural. Commander Thicksall's scales shifted to an interested shade of amber. In his 3 centuries of training galactic defenders, he had learned to recognize potential in the most unlikely packages. There was something about this small human that reminded him of the greatest warriors he had ever known, though he couldn't quite place what it was. The first week of training was designed to break the weak and identify natural leaders among the strong. Physical conditioning took place in gravity chambers that could simulate the crushing weight of gas giant surfaces or the disorienting weightlessness of deep space. Maya watched as Krillian warriors, bred for combat across generations, struggled with exercises that pushed them beyond their evolutionary limits. While others complained about the impossible standards, Maya attacked each challenge with methodical determination. Her human physiology, evolved on a world with variable weather patterns and diverse terrains, proved surprisingly adaptable. When the gravity increased to 3 times galactic standard, crushing several crystalline Vexari cadets into unconsciousness, Maya gritted her teeth and completed her repetitions with mechanical precision. The academic portions were equally brutal. Tactical scenarios based on real Void Hunter encounters filled their days, each one a puzzle of survival against an enemy that seemed to defy conventional strategy. The Void Hunters were not merely another species seeking conquest, they were something far worse. Ancient beyond measure, They consumed entire civilizations, leaving behind nothing but empty space where worlds once thrived. During one particularly complex simulation, Maya found herself partnered with Zix, a Vexari whose crystalline form could process calculations at quantum speeds. The scenario placed them aboard a damaged station with failing life support, surrounded by a void hunter swarm that had already eliminated their backup. "The mathematics are clear," Zix's harmonics chimed with defeat. "We have insufficient firepower to break through their formation. Survival probability is 0.03%. Maya studied the tactical display, her mind working through possibilities that couldn't be quantified by simple mathematics. "What if we don't try to break through?" "Clarification required. Look at their formation pattern. They're herding us, pushing us away from the station's power core. But what if that's exactly where we want to go?" Zix's crystalline structure flickered through several color spectrums as it processed this suggestion. "You propose we move toward certain destruction?" "I propose we redefine what destruction means." What happened next became legendary among the Academy instructors. Instead of attempting to escape or fight their way through the overwhelming enemy forces, Maya and Zix deliberately flew deeper into the station. Using Maya's intuitive understanding of structural weaknesses and Zix's computational abilities, they overloaded the station's reactor while positioning themselves in the one section that would be protected by the blast. The explosion that followed eliminated the entire Void Hunter swarm and catapulted their escape pod to safety. The simulation ended with confused silence from the evaluators, followed by heated debates about whether the solution was brilliant strategic thinking or reckless disregard for protocol. Commander Thicksall reviewed the recordings 3 times before making his decision. The human cadet had done something that defied conventional tactical doctrine, yet it had worked. More importantly, she had inspired her partner to think beyond programmed limitations. That kind of leadership was exactly what the galaxy needed against an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. Word of the simulation spread quickly through the Academy. Other cadets began to watch Maya with a mixture of respect and bewilderment. She didn't possess the natural armor of a Krillian, the computing power of a Vexari, or the psychic abilities of an Etherian. Yet somehow she consistently found solutions where others saw only insurmountable obstacles. The breaking point came during the 3rd week, in what was euphemistically called survival training. Each cadet was dropped alone on the Academy's moon, a barren wasteland where the atmosphere was thin enough to cause respiratory distress in most species, and the temperature fluctuations could freeze or cook unprepared individuals within hours. Maya's emergency beacon activated on the 2nd day, indicating severe distress. Recovery teams launched immediately, expecting to find another casualty for the growing list of training failures. Instead, they found her calmly tending a small fire made from emergency ration packaging, having fashioned a shelter from debris and created a water reclamation system using components from her survival kit. "Why did you activate your beacon?" the recovery team leader asked, scanning for signs of injury or equipment failure. Maya looked up from the primitive but effective cooking setup she had constructed. "I found something you need to see." 20 meters from her shelter, partially buried in the moon's rocky surface, was a piece of technology that shouldn't have existed. The metal was black as the void between stars, yet it seemed to absorb light rather than simply appearing dark. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly and seemed to shift when observed peripherally. "Void Hunter artifact," the recovery team leader breathed, his combat instincts immediately on high alert. "How did you find it?" "I wasn't looking for it," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the implications. "But I recognized the energy signature from the tactical simulations. The question is, what's a Void Hunter relic doing buried on the Academy's training moon?" The discovery sent shockwaves through the Galactic Defense Network. Emergency sessions were called, security protocols activated, and a full investigation launched into how such a dangerous artifact could have remained undetected in their most secure training facility. But for Maya, it confirmed something she had suspected since arriving at the academy. The Void Hunters weren't just an external threat to be prepared for. They were already here, hidden within the very institutions meant to defend against them. And if humanity was going to survive what was coming, they would need to think like humans, not like the civilized galactic species whose predictable responses had already been studied and countered. As she was debriefed by Academy security, Maya realized that her 2% survival odds had just gotten significantly worse. But then again, she had never been one to let impossible odds dictate her actions. If anything, discovering that the enemy was already inside their defenses only made the fight more interesting. The war for galactic survival was about to begin, and humanity's greatest advantage was that nobody, not even their allies, truly understood what they were capable of when the odds were stacked against them. The Academy lockdown lasted 3 days, while security teams swept every corridor, every training chamber, and every piece of equipment for additional Void Hunter contamination. Maya found herself at the center of a storm that threatened to tear apart the carefully constructed alliance between galactic civilizations. In the secure briefing room deep beneath the Academy's main structure, she sat across from Admiral Corvash, the highest-ranking military officer in the Galactic Defense Force. The Etherean's translucent form flickered with barely contained psychic energy, and Maya could feel the alien's mental probes testing the edges of her consciousness. "You understand the implications of your discovery?" Admiral Corvash's voice resonated directly in Maya's mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "If the Void Hunters have infiltrated our most secure facilities, it means our entire defensive strategy has been compromised." Maya nodded, keeping her thoughts carefully shielded, using techniques her grandfather had taught her during meditation sessions in their family's mountain cabin. The old man had claimed that humans possessed natural psychic defenses, evolved during millennia of surviving as prey animals on Earth. She had never believed him until this moment. "The artifact has been contained and is being studied," the Admiral continued, clearly frustrated by his inability to read Maya's thoughts as easily as those of other species. "But preliminary analysis suggests it has been here for decades, possibly since the Academy's construction. That means someone placed it there deliberately," Maya said aloud, her voice cutting through the psychic communication like a knife. "Someone who knew exactly where to hide it and how to keep it undetected." The Admiral's form solidified slightly, a sign of surprise among his species. "You speak with certainty. Do you have evidence to support this conclusion?" Maya leaned forward, her human eyes meeting the swirling vortex that served as the Etherean's face. "I've been analyzing the training scenarios we've been running. Every single simulation is based on recorded encounters with Void Hunter forces. But the responses we're being taught to use are exactly the kind of predictable tactical solutions that would allow an enemy to prepare countermeasures." Around the briefing table, other senior officers exchanged glances that transcended species barriers. Commander Thixol's scales shifted to a worried shade of deep blue, while General Haxtor, a massive Krillian whose armor bore scars from actual Void Hunter encounters, growled low in his throat. "You're suggesting our training protocols have been deliberately designed to make us vulnerable?" General Haxtor's question carried the weight of someone who had lost too many warriors to enemy action. "I'm saying that if I wanted to ensure my enemies fought in ways that I could predict and counter, I would make sure their training taught them to think exactly like everyone expects them to think." Admiral Corvash's psychic presence pressed against Maya's mental shields with increased intensity. "Human military doctrine from your homeworld emphasizes unpredictability and asymmetric warfare. Is this the source of your suspicions?" Maya smiled that same unsettling smile that had disconcerted her fellow cadets. Admiral, with respect, human military doctrine emphasizes winning. Everything else is just details. The meeting dissolved into heated debate as officers from different species argued about the implications of Maya's theory. Some dismissed her concerns as the paranoid speculation of a primitive species. Others worried that decades of military planning might need to be completely reconsidered. While the political storm raged above, Maya returned to her training with a new understanding of what she was really preparing for. The other cadets treated her differently now. Some viewed her with suspicion, wondering if humans might be Void Hunter collaborators. Others sought her out, hoping to learn whatever secret knowledge had allowed her to uncover hidden threats. But it was Zix, her Vexari partner from the simulation, who provided the most useful perspective during one of their tactical analysis sessions. Your species processes information differently than others, the crystalline being observed, its harmonic voice carrying notes of fascination. When presented with a problem, most species search their databases for similar historical situations and apply proven solutions. Humans appear to ignore precedent and generate entirely novel approaches. Maya considered this while reviewing footage from recent training exercises. Maybe that's because humans had to evolve on a world where the rules kept changing. Different climates, different predators, different challenges depending on where and when you lived. The species that survived were the ones who could adapt fastest. This suggests humans would be valuable allies against the Void Hunters, Zix calculated. But it also makes you inherently unpredictable to potential allies. The truth of this observation became clear during the next phase of training. Combat exercises pit teams of cadets against each other in complex three-dimensional scenarios designed to test everything from individual skill to species cooperation. Maya found herself leading a mixed unit of 12 cadets, representing 6 different species with radically different capabilities and limitations. The exercise scenario was straightforward in concept, but brutal in execution. 2 teams would compete to secure and hold a strategic position while defending against simulated Void Hunter attacks. The team that maintained control longest while suffering fewer casualties would win. Maya's team included Tarok, the same Krillian warrior who had initially dismissed human participation in the program. His natural armor and combat instincts made him an obvious choice for frontline fighting. Zix provided computational support and tactical analysis. Sarah, an Etherian whose psychic abilities could coordinate team communications, served as their living communications network. The opposing team was led by Vorthon, a Zenthari cadet whose family had served in the Galactic Defense Force for 7 generations. His team possessed superior firepower, better defensive positions, and the advantage of conventional tactical training that had proven successful for centuries. What they didn't possess was experience fighting against someone who refused to follow the rules they expected. Instead of attempting to assault the heavily fortified position directly, Maya divided her team into 3 groups with seemingly impossible missions. Tarok led a frontal assault that was intended to fail, drawing enemy attention and firepower while giving the impression of conventional human recklessness. Meanwhile, Sarah used her psychic abilities to create false mental signatures, making the enemy think they faced twice as many attackers as actually existed. The real attack came from Zix and a team of engineering-focused cadets who approached the target structure from below, using maintenance tunnels that weren't supposed to be part of the exercise scenario. While enemy forces focused on the dramatic but ultimately diversionary surface battle, Maya's engineers systematically disabled the facility's power grid and life support systems. "This is irregular," Vorthon protested over the communication channel as his team found themselves fighting in darkness with failing environmental systems. "The maintenance tunnels are not part of the designated combat zone." Maya's response was broadcast to all participating teams and observing instructors. "Vorthon, When the Void Hunters attack, do you think they'll limit themselves to designated combat zones? The exercise ended with Maya's team controlling the facility while suffering only minor casualties. But the real victory wasn't tactical, it was psychological. Word spread quickly through the academy about the human cadet who had redefined what was possible within the training parameters. That evening, Maya found herself approached by cadets from species she had never interacted with before. They wanted to understand how she thought, how she approached problems that seemed impossible to solve. More importantly, they wanted to learn how to think like humans when faced with enemies who had spent centuries studying conventional galactic military doctrine. Commander Thicksall observed these informal strategy sessions with growing interest. The human cadet was doing something that military instructors had attempted for decades without success. She was teaching diverse species to think beyond the limitations of their evolutionary programming. But Maya was also drawing dangerous attention. During a routine equipment inspection, maintenance crews discovered surveillance devices hidden in her quarters. The technology was advanced beyond anything produced by known galactic civilizations, suggesting that someone was very interested in studying human tactical thinking. The discovery triggered another security alert, but this time Maya was ready. She had been expecting surveillance ever since the Void Hunter artifact was discovered. What concerned her more was the realization that she was being studied not just by enemies, but potentially by allies who didn't trust humanity's role in the greater galactic community. Late that night, as she reviewed training footage in the Academy's database, Maya noticed patterns that confirmed her worst suspicions. Someone with high-level access had been analyzing every human decision, every tactical innovation, and every unconventional strategy she had developed. The data was being compiled in ways that suggested preparation for countermeasures. If humanity was going to survive the coming war, Maya realized, they would need to be prepared to fight enemies on multiple fronts. The Void Hunters were obviously the primary threat, but there were others within the Galactic Alliance who saw human unpredictability as a danger to be contained rather than an asset to be utilized. The Academy had taught her that survival statistics were based on following established protocols and proven strategies. But Maya was beginning to understand that for humans, survival would require breaking every rule and redefining what victory meant. The war wouldn't be won by armies following conventional doctrine. It would be won by individuals willing to do whatever it took to protect the things they valued most. As she prepared for the final phase of training, Maya knew that her 2% survival odds were about to be tested in ways that no simulation could prepare for. But she also knew that humans had been beating impossible odds since they first walked upright on the African savanna. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you underestimated a species that had evolved to survive against any threat, no matter how overwhelming it seemed. The final examination at the Galactic Defense Academy was never meant to be fair. It was designed to push cadets beyond their breaking points, to simulate the chaos and terror of actual Void Hunter encounters where death was not just possible, but probable. Maya stood in the deployment bay with the 17 remaining cadets from her original class of 300, each one representing the absolute elite of their species. Admiral Corvash materialized in the center of the bay, his Etherean form crackling with barely contained energy. Congratulations on surviving the preliminary phases of training. What you face now will determine whether you have earned the right to defend this galaxy or whether you will join the statistics of those who were not worthy. Maya noticed that several Academy instructors were present for this final exercise, including some she had never seen before. Their postures and equipment suggested they were not merely observers. Whatever was about to happen, it would be monitored more closely than any previous training scenario. You will be deployed to the Kepler Research Station in the Vale Nebula, Admiral Corvash continued. Your mission is simple. Investigate reports of unusual energy readings and determine whether the station poses any threat to galactic security. You have 48 hours to complete your assessment and transmit your findings. Tarok, the Krillian warrior who had become one of Maya's closest allies during training, raised his armored hand. Admiral, will this be a simulated encounter or actual field deployment? The Admiral's form solidified slightly, a sign of what might have been amusement among his species. Cadet, from this moment forward, assume that everything you encounter is real. Your lives, your decisions, and their consequences are no longer academic exercises. As the transport ship carried them through hyperspace toward the research station, Maya studied her fellow survivors with new appreciation. Zix had evolved into a formidable tactical analyst whose crystalline form could process battlefield information at impossible speeds. Sarah's psychic abilities had grown stronger during training, allowing her to coordinate team communications across vast distances. Tarok's combat skills were matched only by his developing strategic thinking. But it was the newer additions to their informal alliance that impressed her most. Kethva, a serpentine Nagan whose species possessed natural stealth capabilities, had learned to think like a human scout rather than a traditional ambush predator. Torres, a stocky dweller whose people lived in asteroid belts, brought engineering knowledge that complemented their growing ability to improvise solutions to impossible problems. The energy readings are unusual, Zix reported as they approached the research station. The patterns suggest technology that is not consistent with any known galactic civilization. Maya studied the sensor data on her personal display. The Kepler research station was a massive structure built into a hollowed-out asteroid designed for long-term scientific missions in the dangerous radiation environment of the Veil Nebula. But the energy signatures coming from within suggested something far more complex than routine research activities. There, she pointed to a section of the sensor scan. That power distribution pattern. It matches the energy signature from the artifact I found on the training moon. Sarah's psychic probe extended toward the station, then recoiled so violently that her physical form shimmered. Something is wrong. Very wrong. The minds inside that station, they're not entirely sane anymore. The docking bay was empty when their transport attached to the station's airlock, which was the first sign that this would not be a routine investigation. Standard protocol required security teams to meet any unscheduled arrivals, especially during a communication blackout. Maya motioned for the team to spread out as they entered the station proper. The corridors were too quiet. Emergency lighting cast shifting shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. Zix's harmonic analysis detected structural vibrations that didn't match normal station operations, while Kethva's thermal sensors picked up heat signatures that appeared and disappeared without explanation. The research logs are still accessible, Torres reported from a wall terminal, but the entries become increasingly erratic over the past 3 weeks. The scientific team was studying something they found in the nebula's radiation fields. Maya accessed the log files and felt her blood run cold as she read the entries. The researchers had discovered technology embedded in the nebula itself, ancient artifacts that seemed to respond to conscious observation. The more they studied these objects, the more their behavior changed. Scientists began reporting shared dreams, synchronized thought patterns, and the growing certainty that their research was being guided by intelligences that existed beyond normal space-time. Void Hunter influence, she said quietly. They didn't find artifacts. They found a trap. The first attack came without warning. Creatures that had once been human researchers emerged from the shadows of the station's laboratory sections. But they moved with coordination that no individual consciousness could achieve, and their eyes held the empty darkness of deep space. Tarok's natural combat reflexes saved the team from being overwhelmed in the first few seconds, his armored form absorbing energy blasts that would have killed lighter species. But Maya quickly realized that conventional tactics would be useless against enemies who shared a collective consciousness. They anticipated every strategic maneuver, countered every tactical decision, and seemed to know exactly what the team would do before they did it. "New plan," she announced over their communication channel as they took cover in a damaged laboratory. "We stop thinking like a team and start thinking like individuals. Completely random actions. No coordination, no tactical communication, no shared decision-making." "That violates every principle of military cooperation," Sarah protested. "We'll be picked off one by one." "Only if they can predict what we're going to do," Maya replied. "Zix, stop calculating optimal strategies. Tarok, ignore your combat training and fight like you're angry. Everyone else, do the most irrational thing you can think of." What followed was the most chaotic battle any of them had ever experienced. Kethva abandoned stealth tactics and charged directly into enemy formations. Torres used engineering tools as weapons in ways that defied their original design specifications. Sarah projected random psychic noise instead of coordinated battlefield communications. The corrupted researchers, linked by Void Hunter consciousness, couldn't adapt to completely irrational behavior. Their shared intelligence became a liability when faced with opponents who refused to follow logical patterns. Maya watched as the enemy formation dissolved into confusion, their coordinated attacks becoming ineffective against targets who moved according to pure instinct rather than tactical doctrine. "The main laboratory," Zix reported during a brief lull in the fighting. "The primary artifact is there. If we can disrupt it, the Void Hunter influence should be severed." The laboratory was a cathedral of twisted science, where reality itself seemed unstable. The artifact at its center was massive, a crystalline structure that pulsed with dark energy and whispered in languages that predated galactic civilization. Around it, the remains of the research team worked with mechanical precision, their human individuality subsumed into something larger and more terrible. Maya approached the artifact while her team held defensive positions around the laboratory's entrance. As she got closer, she could feel the alien consciousness pressing against her mind, offering power, knowledge, and unity, with a collective that spanned galaxies. For a moment, she understood the temptation that had corrupted the research team. But humanity had evolved under different pressures than most galactic species. Where others saw the comfort of collective consciousness, Maya saw the loss of individual freedom that her ancestors had fought and died to preserve. Where others felt the appeal of ancient wisdom, she felt the stagnation of minds that had stopped growing eons ago. Instead of trying to destroy the artifact, which would likely trigger massive energy releases that could destroy the station, Maya did something that the Void Hunter consciousness couldn't predict or counter. She started talking to it. "You're afraid," she said aloud, her voice carrying through the laboratory's strange acoustics. "All this power, all this knowledge, and you're still afraid of species like mine because we do things you can't understand." The artifact's pulsing intensified, and the corrupted researchers turned toward her with expressions of inhuman rage. But Maya continued, her words cutting through the psychic noise like weapons forged from pure human stubbornness. "You study us. You prepare countermeasures. You try to predict our responses. But the thing you can't accept is that we don't want to be predictable. We'd rather die free than live as part of your collective consciousness." The laboratory shook as the artifact's energy output spiked beyond safe parameters. But instead of an explosion, something unexpected happened. The crystalline structure began to crack, not from external damage, but from internal stress. The Void Hunter consciousness, faced with a perspective it couldn't assimilate or control, was tearing itself apart trying to understand human irrationality. "Now would be a good time to leave," Maya announced as the artifact's containment field began to collapse. The escape from Kepler Research Station was a masterclass in controlled chaos. The team fought their way through corridors that were literally coming apart as the Void Hunter technology self-destructed. Reality warped around them. gravity shifted without warning, and time itself seemed to stutter as ancient systems failed catastrophically. They reached their transport ship with seconds to spare, watching from a safe distance as the research station imploded into a brief star that illuminated the entire nebula before fading to darkness. The corrupted researchers had perished with their tormentors, but their sacrifice had revealed something crucial about the enemy. Back at the Academy, Maya faced a review board that included the highest-ranking officials in the Galactic Defense Force. The implications of what had happened at Kepler Station sent ripples throughout the Alliance, challenging fundamental assumptions about how to fight an enemy that could corrupt entire research teams. "Your actions were completely outside established protocols," Admiral Korvash observed, his psychic presence more subdued than usual. Yet they achieved results that conventional tactical approaches could never have accomplished. Maya sat straight in her chair, still wearing the battle-damaged uniform from the station assault. "Admiral, with respect, the Void Hunters have been studying conventional approaches for centuries. They know exactly how we're supposed to respond to their tactics, but they don't understand humans because we don't always respond the way we're supposed to. And you believe this gives humanity a strategic advantage?" "I believe it gives humanity a responsibility," Maya replied. "We're the unpredictable element in this war. Not because we're better fighters or smarter strategists, but because we're willing to do whatever it takes to stay free, even if it means breaking every rule in the book." The review board's decision was unanimous, though not without controversy. Maya and her surviving teammates were granted full certification as Galactic Defenders, but with a special designation that set them apart from conventional military units. They would serve as troubleshooters and problem solvers, deployed to situations where traditional approaches had failed or were likely to fail. As Maya walked through the Academy corridors one final time before deployment to her first official assignment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from an unlikely 2% survival candidate to a key figure in humanity's contribution to galactic defense. The war against the Void Hunters was far from over. If anything, their success at Kepler Station had revealed how deeply the enemy had infiltrated galactic civilization and how inadequate conventional responses would be against such an ancient and adaptable foe. But Maya was no longer the uncertain human cadet who had arrived at the Academy months earlier. She had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior technology or overwhelming firepower. It was their fundamental refusal to accept defeat, even when every rational analysis suggested that survival was impossible. The 2% survival odds had been based on following established protocols and accepted tactical doctrines. Maya had discovered that humans survived by ignoring the odds entirely and writing their own rules for what victory meant. In a galaxy where every other species played by ancient traditions and proven strategies, humanity would win by cheating, improvising, and doing whatever it took to protect the things they valued most. The war for galactic survival was just beginning, and humanity was finally ready to show the universe what happened when you underestimated a species that had evolved to beat impossible odds through sheer stubborn determination to keep fighting long after any reasonable species would have surrendered.